I just had to take a little breaky break. It was getting a bit intense emotionally. After the rape, going back to school was hard. Woodburn is a very small town. Back then it was. I mean, it's definitely grown since I was a teenager, but back then it was such a small town. Everybody knew everybody's business back then. My assault, the arrests, and the search for the one who got away got around town. So when I went back to school, I think it was like a week or two later, one of my good friends, well, I really thought me and this guy were friends. I mean, we did the eighth grade talent show together, for Christ's sakes. He was in my house and we did practice for weeks at a time together, and we're friends prior to that. Something traumatic just happened to me, and I already felt like nobody would believe me, nobody would be on my side about it. And the world ends up proving you right that it's not a kind place. He came up to me during lunch in the Commons as I was sitting there contemplating if I wanted to walk in front of everybody and go up to the lunch line and get my food. He looked me dead in my face and he said, "Why did you lie on them?" I said, "Excuse me?" He was like, "Why did you say that those guys raped you? You know you be out here fucking." As you can imagine, I was so embarrassed. I was stunned. I was disgusted. I was fucking pissed off. How dare you, as somebody who's supposed to be my friend, come up to me and just blatantly accuse me of lying after I had gone through something so violent, violating, and fucking humiliating? Why would you, in front of all of my peers, come up to me and accuse me of lying just because I had been sexually active already? And whose business is that? That's my body, my choice. The shit hurt my feelings. I'm not going to cry about that because I'm not going to give him that power or those tears. But the shit hurt my feelings. And I was embarrassed. I was hurt. And I felt like the motherfucking audacity. How would you, were you in the room? Were you even at the house hearing my screams from the bedroom door? No. Were you at the hospital when I had a rape kit done immediately after, having to turn over all my clothes that were on my back, including my underwear, having to be spread eagle after being sodomized and raped by two, not one, two boys that were older than me? No. So who the fuck are you to even question me? Anyways, let's move on from that segment. That shit was life altering. And it turned me into an angrier teenager. I was already an angry and broken teenager. Look at what I was living with and going through. This just sealed the fate for my teenage years to be hell on wheels, just wild, a wild ride. I ended up turning into a severe alcoholic as a teenager. The best friend that I had at the time, she and I were both coming from broken homes and toxic situations and had gone through some trauma. And as an adult, when I look back on that, that's what it was. It was a trauma bond. We were just wild. There was this club called Mardi Gras back then, and it was 18 and over. So there was a hip hop side, there was a Mexican side, like reggaeton and traditional Mexican music. They were all adults, like full blown adults, over 21. And we were literally 14, 15, not even sneaking in. We would stand in line and we would get in because we were young and pretty and nobody was asking us for ID. We would be drinking all weekend, getting drunk, 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 and still waking up at 6 a.m. to get ready for school and go to school. It was bad. I'm talking, we would down like 26 packs of Coronas or whatever they came in back then. Full blown alcoholics at 14 and 15 due to trauma and lack thereof any kind of guidance from parents, because we both had parents that were addicts. I was fighting more. I was beating everybody ass, like males, females. It was a mess. That's just ruined me as a teenager. Now, fast forward a little bit. I am 15. My dad was still tweaking and tripping. There were people living in our garage. It was just tweaker central. Like, imagine downtown Portland, how you see the people strung out, just doing drugs all out in the open. That was my home. That was my downstairs home and the garage. That's what it was made into. Junkie haven. So imagine being my age, 15, in a house full of people that do not belong in your home, all drug addicts. Ain't no food in the house unless you bring it home from being out with a boyfriend or your sisters bring it home. No heat. Electricity is scarce. Sometimes it's on, sometimes it's not. Sometimes the water is on, sometimes it's not. I was doing anything and everything to not be home. Let's jump into a big transition that happened at that time. I was 15, turning 16. My dad was still beating the shit out of his girlfriend at the time. And my sisters had already moved out. My adopted sister, her mom's side of the family, when they noticed that shit was getting really bad after she and I had ran away when we were 13, 14, her deceased mother's sister, so her aunt, came to Oregon, stood nose to nose with my dad, and said that she was taking my sister to go live with her and told my dad to do something about it if he felt the type of way. Otherwise, she was taking her. And she did that. And I loved that for my sister. I'm glad that she had people, a support system that loved her enough to come snatch her up from this toxic situation and be brave enough to stand toe to toe with my adopted dad and say, "You're not finna do nothing about it. Like, this is my kin, and you are not taking care of her. She is not safe with you. So we're taking her back to California." That's where her mother's family is from and was living. So they came and got her and took her. My older sister at this point was already 18. So she had moved out with her boyfriend. It was just me left there with him. When my older sister moved out, I was terrified. I didn't want her to leave, but I loved her enough to know that she needed to leave for her to start her own life. So I didn't say much. I didn't beg her to stay. I didn't say much, but inside we had been together since I was born, you know? Went through the foster care system, got adopted. I've gone through all this abuse and trauma together. That's my ride or die, my ace. And when she left, I was so scared. I was so scared to be there with my dad and all those fucking tweakers and junkies in my house and his girlfriend, who was also deep in addiction. I didn't say anything. I just let her go, and I wish that she was successful in starting her own life outside of all of this. Well, one night, my dad and his girlfriend were at it again, high as hell. Probably had been on a bender for days at this point. I don't remember them being asleep for days at this point, but they were fighting, and it was bad. I was like, I'm just gonna go to bed. It's like 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock. I was like, I'm just gonna go to bed. This is too much. I get woken up at like 2 something in the morning by his girlfriend, and she is in panic. She's like, "Your dad is pissed off. He's raging. He's thrown all his stuff out in the back patio where the sliding glass door is." She was like, "I need you to help me because he walked off in the dark down by the pond. I need you to help me bring the stuff back in so the cops don't see it and nobody stops here and it doesn't cause a scene." Mind you, it's late. I'm like waking up out of my sleep disheveled. I'm like, okay, I'll help you. So I go downstairs. When I say there was like a 5-foot mountain, she was not exaggerating when she said that my dad threw all of his shit outside in a rage because they were fighting. I started helping her. Oh, this is giving me anxiety. I literally have night terrors about this to this day. And I'm almost 33. Okay. I'm outside. It's pitch black, but we have a light out there by the back porch. It's pitch black everywhere else outside except for right on the porch area where we're trying to put all the shit back in the house so it doesn't draw attention. I'm helping her put the stuff back in the house. My dad had this black trench coat that he loved to wear and a black cowboy hat. He swore he was a black cowboy. Anyways, as we're shoveling this mountain of stuff from outside, and throwing it back into the game room to try to get it from being displayed outside. Down by the pond in the backyard, there's like a property line. I look and I could just see like shadow, like movement, because the moon is out. I can see him walking that property line where the pond and our property connects. I said the girlfriend's name, and I said, "Hey, I think that's dad coming up the pond." She looks up and she goes, "Get inside, get inside, get inside." She starts panicking. I was like, "Okay, well, there's still all this stuff here. Let me finish helping you." She goes, "No, get inside." Before I could even get inside, I step a foot inside the door. I'm by the sliding glass door, a foot right there. She's right outside of it. My dad charges up the hill towards his girlfriend, literally knocks the shit out of her. She falls on the ground. I scream. It's like, "Dad, what are you doing?" She falls on the ground. He gets on top of her. She starts fighting back. She's trying to hit him, telling him to get off of her. She's like, "Your daughter is standing right there. What are you doing? What are you doing?" I'm 15. Normally, when he hits her, we hear it while it's happening, but we see the aftermath. No, as soon as she swung at him back, he literally started punching her. It's the concrete back there. Right outside the sliding glass door, there's just concrete. He knocks her to the ground. He's on top of her, a grown ass man. And he's just literally right in front of me. I am screaming. I'm like, "Dad, get off of her. You're gonna kill her." I literally thought he was gonna kill her right in front of me. He was beating her so bad. And she was doing her best to fight back. I'm screaming, "Get off her. You're gonna kill her." He looks back at me while he's on top of her. He has her down. He looks back at me. And when I tell you, his eyes were black. Like there was no white in his eyes. They were just black. It was like a demon. He told me, "Get back in the fucking house. You're my daughter. Go upstairs." I ran upstairs. I called my sister, my older sister, my biological sister, and I said, "Stairs beating the shit out of D." That's the first initial of his girlfriend at the time. I said, "He is beating the shit out of her." It's like 4 a.m. at this point. I'm like, "He is beating the shit out of her. And I don't know what to do. It's me here. And you know what dad will do if he knows I call the cops." All the tweakers are just in the garage. Ain't nobody coming out to help. Nothing's happening. No one's helping. I said, "I don't know what to do." She goes, "I'm going to call." She said, "I'm going to call the police for you." I said, "Okay." So she calls the police. The police come. Once I hear the police, I come out from the room. And I'm just like, "Please help." Like, hold on. Once I hear the police are there, they put handcuffs on his girlfriend. She is literally scraped up, bruised up, head to toe from what I can see. Blood dripping from her scratches, but because it's a domestic situation. They put handcuffs on them both, but only my dad got arrested. The girlfriend ended up getting to stay. I go to my room to try to lay down. Later in the morning, just a few hours later, as the sun rises, DHS comes. They send out an investigator, caseworker to come talk to me about what happened. Then I let them know that I'm scared. Like, when is my dad getting back out? When is he gonna come home? What's gonna happen? Is he gonna be charged? Is he gonna stay in jail? She lets me know because it's the weekend, he'll stay there for the weekend, but he'll most likely be released that Monday. Then they'll go from there as far as charges being pressed or whatnot. I said, "Can you take me? Please take me today. Just put me back into foster care." I was adopted back when I was 6 by this man and his wife. His wife passed away, and it has been hell since. I said, "Can you please take me back to the foster care system? I would rather be in a foster home than be stuck with him." She could see that I was serious, and she told me that's not the due process. We have to investigate, and then higher up decides if it's reasonable enough to take you out of his care and put you in foster care. But I can't just take you today. I begged her. I said, "Can you please take me? Because if he gets out and he realizes it was because of me that the cops came, he will kill me. And I will not be here for you guys to come back and do an investigation." I begged her and I was crying. I said, "Please." She ended up making, to make that part of the story, long story short, she ended up making some calls. She spent hours standing there making calls to higher ups to ask, like, what can they do to get around this process to make sure that I'm safe. I told her, "You don't understand my dad, who he is, and how he functions right now." She finally gets off the phone with one of the higher ups and she says, "Okay, I have a couple trash bags in my car. I'm going to go grab them, fill them up with whatever it is that you find important to you, clothing, shoes, pictures, and we're going to leave." I cried so hard. Happy tears, though. All I could say is thank you, thank you, thank you. And I was just crying as I was throwing shit in these trash bags. And we left. And I was put back in foster care. I turned 16. They moved me to Salem. I was still wilding. I was still drinking heavy, even in foster care. I ran away from a lot of foster homes. I went through different placements, including the shelter place that they put me in called Safe Place. It's in like Hillsborough or Gresham or something. That place is supposed to be like a prison for troubled youth. They say it's like a shelter for runaways or what have you, but no. The kids that were in there had like serious charges. Serious charges. I'm talking molestations, rapes against other children. There was a 13, 14-year-old girl there that was full blown pregnant, like 6, 7 months when I got there. And she was in there for slinging drugs, cocaine. I'm like, all I did was run away from my last foster home. I mean, maybe it was like the third or fourth foster home at that point, but all I did was run away. And you guys sent me here? I do not belong here. There was a girl there that literally shit in her hands, ran down the hallways of the girls' hall, and smeared it all the way down the hallways. You think me, am supposed to be here? No, I am no criminal. I'm just a troubled kid who doesn't want to be with my abusive adopted father, nor do I want to be stuck in different foster homes with, I'm sorry to say it, but a bunch of white people who don't understand my background, who can't relate to me, who don't understand where I come from or why I have the behaviors that I have or why I act out the way that I do. All they want to do is condemn and punish me. All I want to do is be on my own. I was old enough to be emancipated, and that's all I wanted, was just to be on my own. I wanted to work, I wanted to pay my own bills, I wanted to just be on my own. And that did not end up being the case. So they sent me to that group home because there was no placements to put me at the time. I just kept running away. So they were like, "Look, this is the only spot that we could put you. So here, you're stuck here for 2 months." Okay, great. Anyway, prior to them sending me to that group home, though, when I had moved to Salem, I had met a boy. Initial starts with the letter M. He was nice, but you could tell he was like an F boy. And I think he was just trying to hit on me, but he was being nice. He had a girlfriend at the time, and I wanted no parts of that drama. But I didn't know anybody, so when he approached me about being friends, I was like, yeah, cool, whatever. During that conversation and me kind of giving him my background and how I ended up in Salem because I wasn't from the area, he said, "Wow, you've been through a lot. Do you believe in God?" At that point, I'm going to be honest, I told him no. I said, with everything that I've gone through, there were nights that I begged God to just not wake me up in the morning so I didn't have to deal with my dad and his shit. There were nights that I prayed, "God, please get me out of this situation or let me just die. Let me just die." Because I'm tired. I'm tired of being hit. I'm tired of being neglected. I'm tired of being hungry. I'm tired of being cold. I'm tired of not having a shower. I'm tired of not having my basic needs met as a child. This is not stuff I should have to worry about. I'm tired of not feeling like I belong somewhere. I'm tired of feeling like everywhere I go, I'm not safe. I'm not taken care of. Just let me not wake up in the morning. Please. So, no, at that moment, I did not believe in God. Foolishly. He then asked, well, would you just like to come to church with me? Yeah. 16-year-old boy. That was the first thing he asked. He was like, would you like to go to church with me sometime? I was like, no, no, I don't. Even though I grew up Christian, at that time, I lost all hope. I was like, no, I don't. And he kept on pressing and kept on pressing. And I thank him for that. This is not somebody that's a part of my life now, nor do I want to be, because he's not a good influence. But at the time, he was a good friend for that. And he had convinced me. He's like, just come to one of the youth Bible studies. You don't even have to go to the church service. Just come to a Bible study with me. There's a van and a staff member that will come pick you up wherever you live. I was like, okay, well, this is where my foster home is. Please have them come pick me up. I'll communicate it to my foster parents. They picked me up for youth Bible study. And it was the best time I had had in a long time. It was fun. The way that they taught about the Bible, about God, about Jesus, about the word, it was fun. I had a good time at Bible study. So I started going to their church. At one of these Bible studies, I had met a boy who later, a few years down the line, ended up being my husband. When I was 19, we got married. But let's stick to this point at 16. I had met this boy at the church's Bible study. And he was kind of like, to me, he was kind of lame. I was like, not really my type, kind of goofy. And he was limping and on crutches at the time because he had like hurt his ankle or his knee or something. He had injured himself doing something, I don't know, maybe playing football or training for military stuff. But at the end of the youth Bible study, he had gotten into the church van, the one that takes all the youth whose parents can't bring them or pick them up. I saw him get into the van, but he was making eye contact with me throughout the service. I'm sorry, Lord, I should have been paying attention, but I was paying attention to this boy because he just kept looking at me and giving me little grins. Nothing major, no major flirt, but just definitely was making eye contact with me, and I peeped him, peeped me. So when he walked out and went into the church van, he was the first one in there. So I was like, let me go say hi. Let me see what's up with him before everybody else crawls into this van. So as everybody's dispersing and talking, I got into the van too. He was like, what are you doing in here? I was like, same thing you're doing in here, waiting for us to go home. I was like, I saw you looking at me. I'm sitting there applying pressure. I'm like, I saw you looking at me. He was like, nah, I wasn't even looking at you like that. I was like, yes, you were. And he was like, well, if you weren't looking at me, you wouldn't have noticed me looking at you. So you were looking at me too. I was like, stop, please stop. Anyways, that ended up being my boyfriend. We started dating and I just became enthralled in church. I enjoyed going to learn about God, the word, and the truth about his love, his grace, and his blessings when you're faithful and obedient. I just really started to enjoy church. So I went to church services on Sundays. I would go to youth Bible study and every other service in between. And so would my boyfriend. He was he was just like a little bit of a bad boy. He skipped a lot of school. He smoked weed. He was also kind of rowdy like me. He fought a lot. We were like a terrible perfect match. I don't know at the time. And I enjoyed being with him. Ugh, this gets so messy. And I'm so sorry. Please, we listen and we don't judge. This gets messy. So at church, there was also this other boy who I didn't check for. All the young girls were checking for him. Back then I was the type of girl, and now I'm the type of woman that I just do not check for the popular boys, like the ones that be flexing they shit and doing the most and all the rah rah. My boyfriend at the time was a quiet boy, but he was very assertive, like a manly man, and I like that because he was quiet, but he was about his shit. But there was another boy there. He was the drummer boy at the church, and I didn't know him very well. I just knew him through being at church, and him being the spotlight of the church youth because all the little girly pops wanted him and whatever. Fast forward a little bit, right? I'm 17. I had been with my boyfriend at the time for about a year now. It is the summer of my junior year. I had just ended my junior year. My boyfriend had just graduated high school. He was prepping to do MEPS and then leave for basic training for the Marine Corps later in the fall. This was early, like July of 2009. Yeah, because my daughter was born in 2010. My boyfriend and I had been arguing. We had been fighting because although he was quiet and reserved, he was very confident in himself and a little arrogant. Back then, we had this teenage club in Salem. It had two names. My boyfriend went that prior weekend, and I had heard that he had cheated on me with this stank ass girl from our school. And when I say stank, I'm not being a hater. I really mean stank. Like everybody used to call her fish tank. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It was terrible. I couldn't believe it. I was like, me? You gonna cheat on me with uh, uh, no. Mm-mm-mm-mm. I was so hurt. I had cussed him down. Girl, I mean, I had cussed him out about that. The following weekend, after I had heard these rumors that he had cheated on me, he was leaving for some military business for the weekend. I had gone to church that Sunday. So the Sunday after the weekend that I heard that he had cheated on me. And I'm mad at him. We're arguing over the phone and I go to church. I'm sitting in the second row instead of the first. And I guess the drummer boy noticed because when I walked out of church service that Sunday, the drummer boy walked out of church service too after praise and worship was over and the service started. He walked out in the hallway too. Mind you, we had never had any real conversations prior to this moment. For whatever reason, he caught me in the hallway. He was like, I see you're not sitting in the first row this Sunday and you look a little bit somber. Like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm dating Jay. That's the first initial of my boyfriend at the time. And I heard rumors that last weekend, while all of y'all was at Razzles or the Zone, whatever the name was at the time, I heard that he cheated on me. He had left with such and such. They were gone for a while and they came back together. Like, I heard he cheated on me and I'm hurt. So my head's not in it today. He was like, I'm sorry to hear that. You want to know something crazy? We had gone to a house party and I had come out of a room. They were sitting on the couch with a cover slightly over them. And my girl, I saw her like sit up all shocked and it just looked suspicious. Like they was doing something. I said, my boyfriend and your girlfriend? He was like, yeah. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. So I'm fighting with my girlfriend right now too. Like, we're not on good terms because I couldn't believe that. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is where it gets super messy. Drummer boy's dad and my boyfriend's mother were dating, and drummer boy had just found out his girlfriend was pregnant. She was like fresh pregnant. He was like, I just can't believe that. What is she doing? I was like, I don't know. I can't believe it either. I'm going to just keep it real and get to the point. We ended up in the attic while everybody's in service, and we ended up hooking up. Please forgive me, Lord. Ooh, I know you have because I've repented already and many times. So it is what it is, and I'm not going to feel bad about it now, but I did feel bad about it then. I don't tell my boyfriend. I don't think he told his girlfriend. We didn't tell nobody. It's still very messy, but we ended up hooking up through trauma bonding. We had sex. And fast forward a month or so later, right before school started that fall, I was having excruciating cramps. Like, I've always had terrible period cramps, but they were just so bad. I had woken up in the middle of the night, falling out of the bunk bed at my foster home, curled up in the fetal position, just screaming and crying about the pain. So my foster dad and my foster mom were like, okay, well, we need to take you to the ER. So that morning, once the sun rose, my foster dad took me to the urgent care in downtown Salem. They ran some tests on me. They wanted my urine. They took some blood and they were like, is there any chance that you're pregnant? Mind you, I'm 17. So I'm like, no, I'm lying in front of my foster dad because no, I didn't want people in my business. So I was like, no, there's no chance. Tell me why. They come back in 10 minutes later and they tell me I'm pregnant. 17. I was like, oh my gosh. Mind you, we didn't get into this, but I had had two prior pregnancies when I was younger, 14 and 15. I was pregnant earlier and had lost those babies due to miscarriage. I wasn't in a position to be a mother. One, I was young as hell, and then two, I was an alcoholic. Three, I was still living with my dad at the time, my adopted dad, and that was no place to raise a baby when I'm a baby and I'm already being abused and neglected. Like it was just not a good time. So God has his timing. I was not meant to be a mother. Anyways, fact forward, I am 17 and I'm like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. This is crazy. Like I couldn't believe it. So I'm asking, well, how far along am I? And they were like, well, it seems pretty early, so we can't do an ultrasound, but we're worried about your pain, so we want to wait about 6 weeks so we can do an ultrasound to make sure this is not an ectopic pregnancy, and because of your prior history to miscarriage. I was like, okay, fine. So I'm thinking back, and I'm like, okay, if my last period was this date, and then the last time I had sex at around that time, my boyfriend was out of town. Remember, he was training or doing something to prep to go into basic training. He wasn't there the weekend of what the math would be, right? Of me conceiving during like an ovulation period after my cycle the prior month. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, what was I doing that weekend? Because I don't cheat on my man. Like that was my man. Like my high school boyfriend, like that was my man. So I was like, what was I like if he wasn't there that weekend, what was going on? Like maybe I got pregnant the weekend prior. And then I sat and I was like, that was the weekend I hooked up with the church drummer boy. I was in denial. I was like, no, 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 no. There's no way. That same day when they told me I was pregnant, I called my boyfriend. I was like, I'm pregnant. He was like, what? Pregnant? Mind you, we had been having sex for like a year and some change at that point, unprotected, all that. That was like I said, that was my man. I loved him. Ugh, so young and naive and just clinging to anything that felt like love, right? Anywho, I was like, yeah, I'm pregnant. And he was like, oh my gosh, you're going to have to come with me to tell my parents. I'm like, okay. We had the ultrasound and then they solidified like how far along I was. And I'm going back, me being me, I'm very analytical. So I'm like, let me bust out a calendar. I'm going back on the calendar weeks for how many weeks they say I am. And it goes back to that weekend, the weekend I had sex with the drummer boy. But I'm like, okay, well, my boyfriend was not here that weekend. We had sex that Thursday or whatever. But with ovulation, there's what a 48, 72 hour period that you can get pregnant. So I was worried because I don't know. Like I don't know if this is my boyfriend's or is this gonna be the drummer boy's. I'm a child. I'm 17. I'm scared to mention this to my boyfriend at the time because I'm like, what if he leaves me? Like, I was a little selfish teenager. I'm like, what if he leaves me? So I was scared to say anything. I will admit, I didn't say anything for months. I'm like big pregnant. He's already off to the Marine Corps' basic training, which is long, many, many weeks. I tell him finally, I was like, I think there's a chance that the baby might be the drummer boys. I let him know what happened. I let him know what the scenario was, how to end up that way. And I told him, I don't know if she's yours. And he was heartbroken, heartbroken, understandably. So we agreed that when she was born, we would get a DNA test and we would just go from there. We didn't say anything to anybody. We didn't tell his parents. We didn't tell drummer boy's parent, nothing. We just kept it between us, and drummer boy knew of the possibility. So, and I don't think drummer boy told his girlfriend at the time because she was also having a baby. So my boyfriend is off to basic training for the Marine Corps. He comes back from basic training, and the first night he gets back from basic training, I don't know if it was revenge. I don't know if he was just being a dickhead or what. I was living with his mom, my boyfriend's mom, the Marine. She and drummer boy's dad ended up getting married that fall. And they went through the process of becoming foster parents when they found out that I was pregnant with my boyfriend's child. They wanted to become foster parents so I would not keep running away from foster homes while I'm full blown pregnant with a baby or being out on the street. They wanted to make sure I had a solidified home, a safe space to be while I was carrying this child. And I thank them for that. Thank you. Because you didn't have to. He comes back from basic training. I live with his mom, mind you, right? He can't live there because he's an adult now. He's over 18. I'm 17, and I'm a girl, and I'm still a ward of the state, but these are my foster parents. So he can't come back and live there. But he comes back from basic training. He's staying with, I think, his grandma or his aunt, who were also down the street in South Salem. The first day he gets back, he goes out. I'm like 7 months pregnant. He doesn't come home to me to love on me and kiss the baby, my tummy, and all that. No. The first night he gets back, he goes out to a party and he fucks some broad at a party the first day he gets back from basic. I wrote him every week that he was gone in basic. I gave him updates on the baby's growth. Wrote prayer scriptures in those letters. I let him know everything that was happening out in the world. I made sure to communicate with him and made sure that he didn't feel lonely while he was at basic. And I still loved him. And not to take away from how hurt he was about what I did and the whole baby situation, but I just couldn't believe that the first thing he did was cheat on me when he got back from basic. I'm like, so what the hell are we doing from here? Like, what are we doing? Baby was due at the end of March. You leave just a few weeks prior to my due date. So what are we going to be doing? Are we together or are we not together? And ultimately, we decided to just not be together. Because how am I supposed to trust you in Japan? And the first thing you do is cheat on me, your pregnant girlfriend. And then you come back and have sex with me. What? No. We break up. A couple weeks prior to my due date, he gets shipped off to Okinawa, Japan. I end up having a girl, my sweet baby girl, and he's in Japan. So fast forward a little bit, my baby girl is 4 months. My baby girl is 4 months at this point. And I get my own place. I was able to prove to the courts that I was financially stable enough and had funds enough to take care of me and the new baby that I have. And I didn't need to stay as a ward of the state. I could be on my own, that I could get my own place and all that. So I end up being discharged as a ward of the state. And July 1st of 2010, I got my first apartment on my grown woman stuff. At 18, I got my first apartment with my baby girl. And the Marine and I were not together at the moment, but we're still talking about like trying to be a family, this, and that. But we wanted to figure out, who does she belong to biologically? So we're talking via Skype, because back then we didn't have FaceTime or any of that fun stuff. We had Skype and Uvu. So we're Skyping, talking about, let's do this DNA test, whatever. I reach out to Drummer Boy. He had his baby in December. My first daughter, her birthday is in March. I'm telling him, I know you just had a baby. I just had one too, but you know the situation. We're grown. We need to figure out who the father is so we can move forward accordingly. The Marine was like, just do a DNA test. You know, he's there. He lives down the street. Just do a DNA test with the baby. I was like, okay. So I paid $250, $275 to do this DNA test and send it to DNA Diagnostics. When I got the email notification that the DNA's results were ready, I was able to log in and see the document. I couldn't really decipher what it meant because, hello, I'm freshly 18. I'm barely into adulthood. I've never had this situation happen before. So I don't know how to read this stuff. So I call and I'm shaking. Have you give the password and whatever to verify that you're you. And I was like, can somebody please just tell me yes or no? Like, who's the dad? They tell me, ugh, Drummer Boy's the dad, not who was my boyfriend. I cried. I cried because now I'm facing the consequences to my actions. I was reckless and I did something off a temporary emotion. And here is the permanent result. So I call the Marine and I'm crying. I said, look, he's the dad, the Drummer Boy. He was so hurt. He was just like, what the hell? You know? After a few weeks of discussing it, he was like, look, I want to marry you one day. So if I'm going to marry you and you and the baby are going to come live with me, we have to put my name on the birth certificate. We have to establish that I'm going to be her father. Coming from the background that I had, no guidance, no nothing, and nobody else knowing about this, we were the only 3 people who knew that my daughter was truly not the Marines. Everybody else thought it was the Marines. His parents, our friends, our family, everybody thought it was his. But we knew it was not. And we knew it was the Drummer Boys. But my then boyfriend, future husband, was saying, like, if we're going to be a family and you want me to raise her with you, Drummer Boy cannot be in the picture, period. Period. So you need to make that clear to him if you want me to be able to raise her and take care of you. I'm thinking about, I love this man. Like, I want to be with him. I want this to be my husband one day. I want him to raise this child with me when he's not in Japan. So I called Drummer Boy and I let him know. I was like, look, Maureen wants to help me raise this baby. We want to be a family. We want to get married eventually. You have your girlfriend, you have your child that you guys are raising together, but he's saying you cannot be a part of her life if he and I are going to be a family. And Drummer Boy didn't fight back. He had no qualms. He was like, okay. I mean, again, we were all kids, like, you know what I'm saying? Making adult decisions with no guidance because we're not talking to the adults who love us in our life. Just stupid, stupid, stupid. Anyway, he didn't fight back. He said, okay. He went about his life. And I let the Marine know, like, okay, in order to get his name on my daughter's birth certificate, he signed an affidavit that said, regardless of paternity, he takes full legal, financial, and physical responsibility and custody of her. Had it mailed in to the States, and he ended up getting put on her birth certificate as the legal father. That was her dad. And we raised her to believe that that was her dad at that time. She now knows who her father is, that it's Drummer Boy, and he's been a part of her life since she was 6, but we'll get into that later. And that is the ending of my teenage years. That's when I was 18. So I'm going to end it here for episode 3. I appreciate y'all being here so much. I know it has been a roller coaster of emotions and a hurricane of traumatic story. But like I always say, you could be anywhere doing anything with the 24 hours that you have in a day. And you intentionally stopped here to listen to my story. And thank you so much. Till next time, with love, Sandra.